Looking to improve your diet in the new year? Try seeing a personal dietitian with Nourish. Nourish has hundreds of dietitians who specialize in a variety of health concerns, including weight loss, gut health, and more. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your personal dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to Movie Film. It's episode 311, brought to you by Mr. Boy Productions. I'm Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall, and it is the last day of February.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah, no leap year for us.
That's right.
Not this year.
Not a 1 in 4 proposition this time.
Yeah. Do you have friends that were born on leap year?
I'm sure I do. Nobody comes to mind off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. When I was growing up, one of my best friends had a leap year birthday. And so, as was our way, we'd be like, "You're only 2, like you're only 3.
Hilarious.
Yeah. It was really funny. It holds up as a joke.
It's quality comedy.
Yeah, it's timeless. How you doing?
It's nice. I mean, we're recording on a Friday morning, so definitely I'm feeling a little bit of the relaxation of the week coming to a close.
Yeah. Wait, actually, that's the opposite of what I would expect you to say. I mean, are you feeling like the weekend will offer some relaxation, or is that when things get busy?
Well, for me, I make it a point to have as little to do on the weekends as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's because I'm hustling all week, and I need my me time.
Oh yeah,
on the weekend. So I'm in the ramp down period. I'm making an active effort to like keep just the news of the world to one side. Like I have a feeling this is something many of our listeners are trying to figure out, how to balance knowing everything that's going on with knowing everything that's going on.
It's hard when so much news makes your body tighten.
Yes.
Because you're like, how much more tightening can my body do?
It's so true. God. Yeah. So one thing I've been doing a lot of is I've made it a point that like when I'm in the car in the morning, I will put on some news and just get a sense of what's going on. And then that is my news for the day.
I would say maybe something similar, but I'll still click on articles and whatnot. But something I've really enjoyed is I subscribe to the Washington Post.
Sure.
They have something called the 7.
Okay.
And so in the morning, they'll shoot out an email that will have 7 major news stories with bullet points. And there's links if you want to go deeper, but it gives you an idea, like an overview of the major stories of the moment. And I've really found that to be a good way to sort of start the day, kind of have a general idea of what's going on. And then if I'm want to learn more, and then I can dig in.
I literally just 2 days ago canceled my subscription to the Post.
Oh, yeah.
And if I'm being honest, it was a very difficult decision because I'm somebody, I believe in the importance of journalism. I believe that if you want news, you have to pay for it. I'm a big supporter of, like, you got to pay for the news.
Yep.
And, for those listening, just as a stick pin in time, Jeff Bezos, who owns the Post, he went full Lex Luthor heel turn.
You got ahead of me because I was going to say, well, see, you've always been a Superman guy. I'm kind of a Lex Luthor guy.
It's literally like this is like if Lex buys the planet, the Daily Planet, that is, and so he basically put out this edict that from now on, the editorial page of the op-ed section of the Post will only cover personal liberty and free markets.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
so the free thought section of the newspaper now,
yeah, is my thoughts only, you know?
right?
And I was like, that could not be more super villainy if he was brandishing a shard of kryptonite while putting that memo out, you know?
Yes, I'm
And so
laughing because what else can I do? But yeah,
if you don't laugh, you'll cry. I've been a subscriber to the Post for literally decades at this point.
mm-hmm.
I was like, I can't do it, you know?
Well, I do want to mention, if anyone is interested.
I'm not judging.
No. I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
No, but I was going to say you don't have to subscribe for that.
Uh-huh.
And I don't subscribe to. And by the way, this isn't me like backpedaling because but
sorry, I promise I was not trying to put you in an awkward position.
But if anyone found that format intriguing, I'm sure there are other places that do it too.
It does sound
but
intriguing.
You don't actually have to subscribe just to get those bullet points of the major news stories.
See, I think that's good. Yeah. And it's, by the way, I should say the news operation at the Post, the journalists are doing amazing things.
Yeah.
Trying really hard under very difficult circumstances. But this gets to something broader, which is like maybe just like conglomerates and billionaires owning all the news is not a great idea.
I know. I mean, it's novel thought, right? Like, let's not have people whose interests involve billions of dollars, in charge of the information we receive.
So I was really wrestling with this earlier this week because I was reading about how, I don't know if you heard about this, but Donald Trump, as a candidate before he even became president, was suing 60 Minutes.
Yes, right.
Because he alleged election interference because they interviewed Kamala Harris and they edited the interview in order to fit in, the time slot. Which, that's how it works. That's how interviews work. You edit them. I do interviews for the newspaper all the time. That's just how it is. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you see it often in print. We'll say condensed for clarity, and whatever.
Exactly. That's just
it's common practice.
And by the way, Donald Trump knows it's common practice, right? But 60 Minutes, which is owned by CBS, which is part of Paramount Corporation, is about to be acquired by Skydance, and so that acquisition requires, a federal approval. Mm-hmm. And so in order to grease the skids for that acquisition, CBS will likely settle the lawsuit, even though it's a joke lawsuit, to the tune of whatever it is, $25 million. So it's like a $25 million bribe.
Wow.
And this is not conspiracy talk.
Yeah.
This is just what's happening. And my point is, like, in a broader sense, this is not good. It's just not good because the precedent it sets is horrific. It diminishes the value of actual journalism, and it diminishes their ability to actually hold power to account if powers actually don't hold power to account.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. That's where we're at, man.
I know.
Anyway, so the point I was making way earlier was I've been diminishing my news intake, and to make up for that, I've been listening to more audiobooks.
Oh, what are you listening to?
Well, so I'm currently listening to a book that I think our listeners would find interesting, and it's called Box Office Poison.
Oh, yes. You sent me a link to this.
Yeah. So you would, I think you would find it really enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And basically, this is a book by Tim Roby, and it's called Hollywood's Story in a Century of Flops.
Century?
So, yeah, crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got essentially going from 1916 to 2019. So not every single flop ever, obviously, but certain key flops and what they said about Hollywood at that moment.
That's fascinating. I like that because I would like to learn about a flop in a time that I know nothing about.
Right.
Because you can see, probably things that feel familiar. It also teaches something about the era.
Yeah, so for example, the very first chapter is about a movie called Intolerance, which was directed by D.W. Griffith. You know Griffith, right? Mm-hmm. He did Birth of a Nation. So after doing Birth of a Nation, which is just a horrifically racist, awful movie, he tried to be like, no, I'm not a racist, and he made a movie that's equally offensive, for different reasons. And then we've got another chapter about Dune, the 1984 Dune.
Oh, nice.
There's a chapter about the Magnificent Ambersons.
No.
Yeah.
Well, now I have to get it.
Exactly. There was actually a couple ones actually. There was one chapter about the movie Supernova. Which it was directed by Walter Hill. I think it ended up as like an Alan Smithy situation, I think.
Okay.
And I remember watching that in the theater back in 2000 with Paul.
Wow, 2000? I was thinking, was this some 80s movie I missed? Or okay.
No. Yeah, this is relatively more recent than that. And it's a total catastrophe. But what's hilarious, it's like the sci-fi thing, shades of Event Horizon, and kind of, but way worse. And you've got a pretty decent cast, right? Angela Bassett, James Spader, and there's a total mess. And so sometimes you watch these things and you're like, God, this is the story behind how they made it is almost more interesting.
Yeah, sure.
And that's this one is kind of funny. This is amazing. So it's set in space, and there's like a zero gravity love scene with Peter Facinelli and Robin Tunney. Okay. And they're like floating and doing it. Okay. Now, so the movie gets shot and it's done. And then at some point, MGM brought in Francis Coppola to try to recut it.
Okay.
And so they're trying to recut it, and they're trying to, so I guess the Spader character and the Angela Bassett character, bear in mind, I've seen this movie. I saw it 25 years ago. I do not remember what it's about.
Sure.
It's just vapor. But anyway, the Spader character, Angela Bassett, they have some kind of a romance. And so as they're cutting the movie together, they're trying to highlight the romance between them, but there's no footage. So what they did was this is amazing, Brian. They took the footage from the Robin Tunney, Peter Facinelli love scene.
Yes.
And they digitally darkened Robin Tunney and intercut shots of Angela Bassett's face.
Looking to improve your diet in the new year? Try seeing a personal dietitian with Nourish. Nourish has hundreds of dietitians who specialize in a variety of health concerns, including weight loss, gut health, and more. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your personal dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
To make us think it's the same sex scene, but once it's the darker version.
All right, let's skin tone aside. Let's put that on the table for a second here. I mean, does their hair even look similar?
No, what they did, it's just like certain shots that avoid her face, and then you just intercut like close-ups of Angela Bassett and James Spader.
I guess part of it, why I'm even thinking that, is in my mind, I always picture Robin Tunney with short hair. I don't know why, the movies I've seen her in.
Yeah, and in this also, yeah.
Yeah.
So they just you don't see her face.
I see. I gotta Google that now. I have to know it. So wait, so they did, is that with existing footage of Angela Bassett? Like they didn't bring her in for reshoots just to
they just face, right? Probably ends and whatever of her face.
Like, so it's like her eating a meal and she's like, that's good pudding. And they're like, oh, use that.
I mean, I suppose I'm picturing the editors here just trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear.
That's pretty good.
I
don't know if I've ever had that come to my mind to say that. I'm really impressed, Zach.
Really? It's good. I didn't make it up. I promise.
No, I know. I'm just I have to vocalize how impressed I am. But
so that by itself was a fascinating chapter.
See, this is the stuff. Obviously, doing this show, people know we love. Like, we really love not just movies but filmmaking, and stories like this. I mean, I gobble that stuff up. So yeah,
there's another chapter, as it happens, and this is relevant because we were just talking about John McTiernan. Is a chapter about Rollerball,
which I know was a notorious flop, but I don't know why. I've never even seen it, to be honest.
Well, you are not alone. We know that. Yeah, that's a weird one, right? Because that one, it effectively killed John McTiernan's career, right?
In a couple of ways, right? I mean, there was the film not performing, but wasn't that the movie where
Yep.
he was wiretapping a producer on the film?
That's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
And he got in trouble for that. And I don't even know if he got in much trouble for that, but it was that he lied, right?
He lied about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all like mentioned,
Okay.
And it really, I mean, when you think about it, what kind of a 50 megaton bomb must a movie be to kill the career of the guy who made Die Hard and Predator?
Yeah.
kind of
Thomas
amazing.
Crown. Like, I mean, he's made some bona fide hits.
Yeah. So there's the whole thing that gets into that, and it is fascinating because the I haven't watched the remake of Rollerball since it came out, but I've seen the James Caan one relatively recently, and I'm like, this is a good movie. Like it's a legitimately good movie. It's not cheesy. It's pretty good. It's got something to say. It has a point of view, and so to take whatever that movie had going for it and just turn it into this probably the most 2000 movie you could ever make.
Yeah, I can kind of picture it in my mind. It has LL Cool J, right? And Chris Klein
in the James Caan role. Right there, you got a problem, right?
Right.
I
mean, that's the thing with him. He gets dumped on a lot, but I think he was cast badly a lot.
Well,
like, he's very good at what he does well.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, his American Pie character notwithstanding,
Election,
he was very good.
Just Friends, right? He's good in those.
Yeah. Well, I think. Wow, I didn't realize we were going to be like the defending Chris Klein thing. But yeah, he seemed just from Election, he seems like a perfectly cromulent personality, right? Just a nice guy. He seems like a nice guy.
Sure. Yeah.
And that, to me, is the problem, at least from the two that come to mind, where they're trying to have him buck his persona, which is Rollerball and that Street Fighter movie. It's like, well, he's not like a badass.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so why are you trying to force him into that? And then I don't know what he's done lately, but that movie, I mean, it pretty much destroyed everybody's career,
Wow. Yeah.
And
then NCIS came a call into LL Cool J, and he's like, yes, and then jumped on that train car and rode away.
You know what? When a CBS procedural knocks on your door, you damn sure better answer.
Yeah.
Hey, LL Cool J and Chris O'Donnell both, man. I'll bet you they're sitting there every day. Every day they open their mailbox and there's a little residual check for 14 years of NCIS Los Angeles or whatever it is.
Oh man, should be so lucky,
right? But that's the thing. So I was recommended this book by oh shoot, you know what? I wish I could remember the person who recommended it to me. But it was a good recommendation. I've really enjoyed listening to it. And the great thing is, each chapter is about a movie, but you listen to it all and you're getting a story, right? Because it's all contextualized. So, for example, you talk about Speed Racer.
I've been working with a nurse dietitian for the last 6 months, and it's been life-changing. I've lost weight, healed my relationship with food, and have way more energy. Working with a dietitian online to create a personalized nutrition plan was so easy thanks to Nourish. The best part? I pay $0 out of pocket because Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
And it's not just, and Speed Racer came out and it sucked or whatever, or it flopped. It's like that year, this movie was a big hit. And, so it's giving you the moment that the movie emerged into.
Right. That's an interesting one too, by the way. I know it has its fans.
Yeah. People
that think it was misunderstood and really love it. And it's made me want to go back and rewatch it, but I just never am in the mood or something.
I just rewatched it recently, and just for that reason, because exactly what you're saying. I mean, there are people who are very much on board with what it's offering. And I always say about Speed Racer, I'm like, I appreciate that it's doing something kind of off the wall. It's just on a frequency that is not playing for me.
Sure.
Right. I think I applaud the Wachowskis for being like, hey, we're just gonna we're going to go wild with Warner Brothers' money.
Yeah,
But, you know,
yeah.
you do that enough, and eventually Warner Brothers is going to stop giving you its money, which is what seems to have happened, you know?
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Well, maybe I won't then.
So, I mean,
Unless anyone wants to write in and persuade me.
Oh, I know there's plenty of very dedicated fans of that movie out there, so let us know. But like I said, if anybody's interested, the book is called Box Office Poison: Hollywood's Story in a Century of Flops, and it is very, very, it's entertaining and informative.
All right, and you say you're doing the audiobook. You enjoy the narrator?
Good narration. Yeah, that's always you know, sometimes you get a good book with bad narration, right?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before. Not that it was bad, but many years ago I tried to do To Kill a Mockingbird through an audiobook. Just I wanted to revisit it, but I was like, I'll do it while I'm doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman, it was read by this really old woman, and she was talking very slowly, even when I sped it up. And it just, I didn't finish it. I was like, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to read it.
Well, they got you to read, so that's something.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember there was a this is not exactly an audiobook, but it was like an animated comic of Watchmen.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right. And it was like one person doing all the voices and everything.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can't take this seriously, you know?
You know, that happened to me when I did the audiobook for 11/22/63, the Stephen King story, which,
sure.
by the way, I adored. Someday I would love to sit down and read it, but it's just so damn big. I don't know. But anyway, yes, you had this man narrating it, and it's a love story. So it'll be like, I love you, Josie. I love you too, Brett. You know, and I'm like,
that drives me nuts.
Yeah, it's like, I could tell it like didn't work for me by a couple degrees, even though I did love it overall, where I was like, I don't know, maybe just hire like a woman too, you know, like.
You know what that reminds me of? Sorry, we're doing like a total tangent here, but that reminds me of the very first audiobook I ever read or heard, excuse me, was Roddy McDowall reading the Batman 89 novelization.
Oh, wow, what a get.
Right? Back in 89, you know? And I just remember it's the scene where you know, you've got the Harvey Dent press conference, you know, and then Alicia looked at Jack. Pretty tough talk about Carl. You know, I'm like, to this day, I remember what that sounds like.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Anyway,
did he do his Nicholson? I didn't ask.
I'm glad he didn't actually. Yeah, that could have gone. He did a Joker that was. What I realized in hindsight, his Joker was his Mad Hatter, because he was the Mad Hatter in the animated series.
Ah, okay.
You know,
I was wondering if he went a little more Cesar Romero or something.
He went a little nuts. Yeah. He got nuts.
yeah. Come on, that's great.
Anyway, what have you seen lately, Brian?
I've seen a couple things. I'll talk about two things, and then one thing we both saw, so we can talk about that. But I saw a movie that I have not heard a lot about. Called My Dead Friend Zoe.
Yes.
Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so apparently it comes out today. It is a smaller film, but it is from Universal. And it's a story about an Army vet who served in Afghanistan, who comes home and has to take care of her grandfather, played by Ed Harris. And his health is declining. And all the while, she's basically hanging out with the ghost of her best friend. Who she was stationed with in Afghanistan. And so, and the ghost is a real sort of sarcastic, wisecracking sort of force that drives our hero crazy a little bit. And it's interesting because it's basically a dark comedy or like a dramedy ghost story about PTSD. And it's funny because I really was intrigued by the premise. And I'll have to be honest, like when I started it, I wasn't quite sure what to make of the movie at first. It begins like a little slower paced, and I wasn't sure all the comedy was landing. But, you know, I decided, I should say I saw this as a screener. And so I decided to stick with it. And I thought the actors were good. And then it just slowly started to click into place. The tone, the characters, the story, it starts revealing things so we start to understand a little bit more context between the friends. And I went from starting the movie a little bit like, I appreciate the effort, to by the end, I had tears streaming down my face.
Wow.
So I would say it's a little uneven, but ultimately it was really impactful. And it's worth noting that it was co-written and directed by Kyle Hassman Stokes, who himself is a veteran. And this movie was inspired by two friends that he lost. And I really do feel like that enhances what you're watching, because you can just sense that this comes from a really personal place. And yeah, I mean, by the end of it, when all was said and done, I mean, I really do think it turned out to be a really lovely and affecting tribute to his friends and to veterans and to anyone suffering from PTSD, really.
Wow.
Pretty powerful by the end. So
that's great.
Yeah. I was really glad that I got to be honest. I don't know if I would have even heard of it if it hadn't been sent to me. And I just, again, for a little bit of context, I couldn't beam it to my TV for some reason. So I had to watch it on my laptop, which I wasn't crazy about. And like, I wasn't quite on its wavelength at the beginning, and I did find myself looking around a little bit. And then, to this film's credit, I mean, when it started clicking, I forgot all of that. It had my full attention. And like I said, I had tears at the end of it. So it's a first directorial effort from Houseman Stokes. And I think he, like I said, it's very personal. And I think he did a really great job sort of like distilling complicated things, like obviously something from his life, but the way that he was able to turn it into this weird ghost comedy and have me understand something about him that I don't know that I would have, understood when just written on paper. Like, oh yeah, I came back from this place and I lost a friend and it makes me feel like this. You're like, well, that sounds terrible. But like experiencing it through these characters in this unique and interesting take really brought me into it and made me feel a lot of feelings. And I think he did a really great job. So
that's great. Okay.
Yeah, wanted to shout that out. And then Zachy, I did it. Last night, I spent 3 hours and 40 minutes in a movie theater, and I finally saw The Brutalist.
Was it brutal? The experience, not the movie.
Well, if you ask me, no. You ask my friend, I don't know what he would say. So for those who don't know, and I didn't really know what this was about when I went into it. I knew it was about an immigrant immigrating to the U.S. after World War II, and he's an architect. That's all I knew, and that is what it is. It's a Hungarian Jewish Holocaust survivor, comes over to the U.S. Prior to the war, he was an architect, and once he gets to the U.S., he's struggling a little bit to find work. And he ends up redesigning a wealthy businessman's library. And I hesitate to say more than that because it actually was nice not knowing where it was going. But, needless to say, opportunities arise for him following that. And an opportunity comes up where he can make something grand and personal. And, of course, there are, obstacles along the way.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting movie. I was lucky enough to see it on a big screen, but that aside, just the filmmaking itself, it just feels very grand and gargantuan.
If you have health insurance, you might be able to see a personal dietitian for $0 out of pocket. Nourish connects you with a dietitian that fits your needs, covered by your insurance. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans, and 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. With hundreds of 5-star reviews from real patients, you know you're in good hands. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
And at the same time, it also is very intimate and it feels very lived in. This story about the immigrant experience. And I walked away transported. I really liked it. And I talked about this many months back, but seeing the movie Civil War, where I know some people could, have have some problems with it or be like, oh, yeah, it was pretty good, but I don't know about this and that. And I might even agree with you, but I was in another world for 2 hours, and that doesn't always happen. And I had the same feeling with this, where I really felt like I left another, like I almost time traveled to another era and hung around beside this person and just experienced someone else's life for
Okay.
3 hours and 40 minutes. And that really moved me, and I really enjoyed that. The other thing too was not knowing even what the tone of this movie was. I didn't know what lay ahead. I didn't know if there was some huge tragedy that was going to happen. I didn't know if people were going to is someone going to murder someone? Like, I literally had no idea what the tone of this movie was. And there is this
best way to experience a movie, isn't it?
It really is. And there was this sustained unease in the air while I was watching it. I was uncomfortable. And you know what? I'm sure he had the same feeling, that character. So I really did get to experience that along with him, where he's getting to do something exciting. And there was a moment where I almost wanted to clap my hand because I was so excited for him. But then there is the unease. He doesn't know what lays ahead. A lot of things are out of his control. And I feel like maybe that is why I experiencing the movie the way that I did. I really felt transported with it. I'll say it's, I've heard a lot of people speak about the fact that it's in 2 parts. So there's being almost 4 hours, there's an intermission in the middle. And I had heard a lot of people talk about preferring the first half to the second half. And I can understand that, actually, because I think the first half has a lot of drive that's pretty irresistible. This immigrant coming over, not knowing anyone, not knowing what he's going to do, and then finding opportunity. And that's it's paced, I should say, it's paced pretty leisurely. So know that getting into it, I don't know if I call it a slow burn, but I would say it's a little leisurely. But you really want to see things work out for this character. So I was really invested and interested in this person. The second half, I think people's feelings about it will depend on if you were invested completely at this point. So you want to know what's going to happen with this project with this guy. So that keeps you motivated. The second half becomes a little bit more about him and his personal life. And if you just aren't into it, like if it didn't lock on to you, I could see people feeling like less interested as it went along. But yeah, no, it's just big, grand, historical filmmaking. Like it reminded me actually of The Master, that kind of a feeling, or Phantom Thread, both PTA movies.
Which are great movies. Yeah,
great movies. And I don't know that I connected with this one as in the same ways that I did with those others. I think The Master, at least in terms of how that movie made me feel, is a good point of comparison.
Do you think it would have worked better for you if Adrian Brody had a Rasta wig?
By the way, did we talk about this when they showed that clip?
Oh, at the SNL thing?
The SNL 50, was someone like, oh, he ain't, I'm gonna make sure he doesn't get that Oscar. When they were showing it, I mean, for people who don't know what we're talking about, years back, when Adrian Brody hosted SNL, he was introducing, I remember who the musical guest was.
I don't remember.
I think they might have been have a reggae bent to them. So he went, nobody knew he was going to do this. But when he, usually you go, ladies and gentlemen, Maroon 5 or something like that. Like, he came out with a Rasta, dreadlock wig on, and started talking in a fake bad Jamaican accent. Yeah. And it went on for what felt like forever. And can you imagine what Lorne Michaels was doing under the bleachers with his papers, probably, squeezing them in his hands, watching it. Anyway, that's but yeah, anyway, so The Brutalist, I don't know that it's paced or plotted for maybe the casual moviegoer or something. Someone who's looking for something to just pop on a Friday night, this might not be for you, but there is wonderful acting in this, and it's a really intriguing character film, and it just feels, like I say, I keep thinking of the word transportive and epic in this really unique and special way, and I was really glad to go on the journey with it.
Well, there you go. Hey, that lights a fire under me to carve out the. I don't know how I'm gonna make that 3 hours and 45 minutes fit in with my schedule. But
I mean, that's just it, isn't it? Wait, what was I seeing? Oh, that Mickey 17.
yes,
I was like, yeah, of course. I want to see that. And then I saw it was over 2 hours. And I was like,
yeah.
why?
A lot of this stuff.
Stop
All those
it.
short movies seem to be coming back. There's under 2 seems to be more common than not these days.
Yeah. But what I was going to say real quick for you specifically is, you obviously you could break it up. There's a natural break in the middle built into the movie. But I do wonder if the second half, you almost need to come right off the first half to feel as invested in the second half. I don't know.
What,
I'd be
what do you think? Just family movie night?
No.
No.
Sorry, to people who haven't seen it, not that it would be obvious, but it's funny. It's not that there's just like 2 sort of sex scene moments, and one at the beginning is like pretty graphic, but yeah, I mean, you could like sort of, if you had like chapters, I'm sure you could like chapter skip or something, but
yeah.
But I did watch something else.
Well, actually, hey, before we even do that, we were talking about the SNL thing. I just wanted to get, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about it. What did you think of the SNL?
Oh, we
50?
haven't talked about this?
No.
I really enjoyed it. I mean, we've said we're huge SNL people, and we still watch it every week, and we also love learning about the history, and so this was kind of all of the above, right? Where you get to watch sketches and relive the greatest of from the past, but it was also kind of about the lore and shining a light on, there were all these documentaries that were dropping on Peacock about the writers specifically, and how they focus on the cowbell sketch for an hour and talk about what went into creating that and how it came to be as we know it. And I just devoured all that stuff. And
I was thinking, I saw some folks online who are like, what, something to the effect of like, why are they making such a big deal out of this SNL thing? And I'm like, because it's the 50th, and that's a huge deal. Like, can we not?
Well, I would say 2 things. One, what you just said, because it's 50 years old, and in television, that's like monumental.
Absolutely.
And secondly, if you don't care, then why are you even commenting on it? Like, go pay attention to what you care about.
What you care about, exactly. For me, I loved all the documentaries, and then they had the concert the night before,
which people have recommended that to me, and I still haven't watched it, but I'd like to see.
Yeah, I've seen the clips, on YouTube and whatnot. But the actual the event, it was. For me, it was one of those things, because I was watching it with my oldest. I was like, I feel like it's like the rings of a tree trunk. How many SNL anniversary specials you get to watch, Because the 25th, and I don't think there was the 30th, but the 40th, and, that's the fun, and that's the history, and that's the legacy, and I love all of that, And what I realize is like, the legacy of how you have your sketches, and then those are the sketches that you share with your kids, or that you shared with your parents, and it just gets passed along, right?
Yeah.
And that's the amazing thing. That's what makes this so unique,
Totally.
And I think because every couple of years we get the show sucks now, whatever, and that's almost missing the forest for the trees, right? Is the existence of the show, and it's going to be this amazing thing that just carries on,
I think that's a real key to unlocking a love of the show, which is, every episode is uneven because they made it in 6 days.
That's right.
And that's part of its charm, is when something does land, what a miracle, and when it doesn't, you think, oh, I think I see what they were going for there. Like, it just didn't come together, it's all part of it.
Right. And just to pick up on what you're saying, what you realize is in any given season with your 20 plus episode, there will be probably like 5 sketches that are just all timers.
Sure.
Not to say the rest will suck, right? There'll be varying degrees of amusing, and some just won't at all.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be a handful in any given season that are just like they are watched and talked about forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? For every one cowbell, there's how many that are just kind of, they just came and went. And that's the nature of the form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it fun,
I agree. I agree.
I should also say, we were talking about audiobooks. I downloaded the audiobook of Lorne, which is the biography of Lorne Michaels.
I listened to a long form interview with the author.
Yes.
And it made me really want to check it out.
Yeah, I was like, oh, great. And then I saw it's 22 hours. And I was like, oh, okay then.
Do you ever get like a little giddy thrill, though, when you put it to like 1.7 speed and all of a sudden it's like 16 hours? You're like, hey.
Dude, do you remember that it was, I think it was a New York magazine, about how the author of that book accidentally didn't do like a blind copy when she sent a mass email?
Oh, yes. Yes. Right.
So she sent a mass email to like all these luminaries, SNL related and not, and about like, hey, I'm having like a cocktail for the book or something to that effect. And instead of doing a BCC, she accidentally just hit, just her entire address book.
You're right.
And so before long, this reply all theater started playing out.
Right. With
like
these
Tina
really
Fey,
famous
Colin
people.
Jost, and like famous people. Some people are like, "What?" Aaron Sorkin's like, "Why is everybody emailing me?" And I'm like, "What a fascinating list to get to be a part of, right?" Like, that's its own little status symbol, right? If you're in that mix,
Yeah, something like that is like almost a historical document. Like that should be in the Library of Congress. This email chain.
It was very funny just reading the responses to the responses and stuff, and the way it just kept escalating. So funny.
Yeah, it was.
Anyway, sorry, I didn't get a chance to talk to you.
No. Well, and it's funny too because the show itself was very long, and
yes. It was like 4 hours, I think.
Yeah. I watched it with some friends, and I think I don't know that we did it on purpose, but we started it a little late, so we were able to fast forward through a lot of the ads, and that made it go a little easier. But it was fun. It just felt like a good celebration. They brought back some of their famous sketches, but notably there were sketches that feature a huge cast of characters, so they could slot in a bunch of major celebrities like Eddie Murphy and stuff to like just make it feel big and like a celebration. And some of them hit, some of them didn't. And and I was talking about that with my friends because we were like, oh, that didn't really work, did it? And I was like, yeah, it's SNL. Like it's some of it works, some of it doesn't. That's the show.
The fact that you and I, we talked about this, that they had the Black Jeopardy sketch, and you had Tracy Morgan as a character, and then Eddie Murphy playing Tracy Morgan.
Right.
And I was like, imagine being Tracy Morgan.
Yes.
You probably grew up idolizing Eddie Murphy, and now he's on stage imitating you.
I know. I thought that very thing. What a mind trip.
What a moment,
Yeah.
Anyway, what else did you see?
Well, I saw we both watched the same thing, which was September 5.
Yeah.
Which is kind of fascinating because this, I believe, came out last year. I think the thinking was it would be an awards contender, and it just, I don't even know when it actually dropped. It
just
suddenly
came and
was
went.
Streaming. I mean, it just completely flew under the radar.
I mean, this was not a streaming original, right?
No. I think this wasn't. Well, you know what? I feel like I do remember it playing at my Regal for at least a week or something. And I thought, I'm curious about that. But it's interesting. I kind of wonder why that is. But
well, I if I were to guess,
we probably have the same guess. Yeah.
So we should say first of all, so it's about the terrorist attack at the Munich Olympics in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
But it's specifically about how the ABC Sports team were the only TV crew that was positioned to actually cover the story.
Yeah.
From a front row seat. And what I really, I just realized I'm talking right. I cut you off. I apologize.
No. You're exactly. Yeah. Go ahead.
If you have health insurance, you might be able to see a personal dietitian for $0 out of pocket. Nourish connects you with a dietitian that fits your needs, covered by your insurance. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans, and 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. With hundreds of 5-star reviews from real patients, you know you're in good hands. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
So anybody who knows me knows I'm a huge fan of just like journalism movies. This is my sweet spot. And multiple listeners reached out to me and were like, Zach, you got to watch this. I was like, oh, I know. It's on my radar. But I love, people know me. That's good. But what I love is it truly exists only within the field of awareness of these TV people.
Yes, exactly.
Any information we get, we only get if they get.
Right.
And that's what I really liked about it. I thought Peter Sarsgaard in the lead role, he's Rune Arledge. It was like this is what a dork I am. I'm like, I know Rune Arledge.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he's very good in the lead, and really like it's a very small scale, but the stakes feel very high.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to call out John Magaro.
John Magaro, yeah, from The Big Short.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't place him, but he is captivating.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
terrific.
very understated, but captivating. We talk about competence porn and
Yes,
how much we
yeah.
love that in our stories, which is basically something happens and smart, competent people are thinking quickly on their feet and doing the best they can. And the best they can is pretty damn good.
Right. And just to add to that, and grappling with the ramifications if they get it wrong.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Like there's a whole moment where they're deciding who to call the perpetrators. Like, are they terrorists? It's like, well, terrorist is a charged word. Do we know, like, who are they? Blah, 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 blah. Like they don't know anything, and they're figuring it out as they go. And they have a responsibility as, like you said, the sole people who will be bringing this live to the world. And it's an analog world, right? Like there's this moment at the beginning I loved where this is happening in the Olympic Village, which they're pretty close to their broadcast operation. And so just, again, being in 1972, they don't have little handheld cameras and stuff. So they have to take a TV camera, like a big clunky sitcom looking TV camera. And they make the decision, like, I don't know how, find cable long enough and just roll that thing out onto a hill. And I don't know, just the quick thinking and the innovation, like they don't realize it, but they're innovating live news coverage.
Yeah.
I loved this movie. I thought it was riveting.
Yeah. I think that, and by the way, Benjamin Walker, who he was the guy from Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Wait, who did he play?
He plays Peter Jennings.
Oh, yeah. Wait, was he Lincoln?
He was Lincoln, yeah.
Well, I'll be damned.
Right. And his Peter Jennings was incredible.
No joke. I his voice is spot on.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, that is exactly Peter Jennings' voice,
Yeah. No, I think I texted you afterwards and was like, how did everyone miss this?
Yeah.
This is just really, and it's like 90 minutes. It's only what it needs to be. And I don't know. I was riveted. Yeah.
I suspect that current geopolitics played a role in this one probably getting swept under the rug a little bit.
Maybe feeling like a little hot button.
A little bit, yeah. And whether that's the right decision or wrong decision, I'm not going to get into that. But I think the movie itself works because it's about the responsibility that comes with being a journalist,
Yeah, like, I mean, the movie isn't about politics or even the situation itself.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just a thing that's happening, and we're following the people that have to figure out, in a time before this was commonplace, how do we as responsible journalists bring this to the world? And
in a marked contrast from The Brutalist, this one is 94 minutes soaking wet.
Yeah, which is great.
So that's a nice little chaser.
Yeah. Oh, and then I wanted to also call out, I don't know how to say her name, but Leonie Benesch, maybe?
Yes.
She's the German translator, and she was in a movie I really liked called The Teacher's Lounge. So I was happy to see her again.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, I'm glad we both like that.
Yeah. It's I think it's on streaming now. I don't know if it's on like VOD or PVOD streaming.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if what service is going to have it, but if it comes across your radar, it's worth watching. I think it's pretty terrific.
Yeah, and I think its screenplay is nominated either for best screenplay or best adapted screenplay. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So that's something at least.
Little love.
Hey, we got some listener letters here, Brian.
Oh, great.
So here's a note we got from Spencer Toyson, and this was in regards to our commentary track for Office Space.
Oh, okay.
And he says, hello, dudes. So the same feeling that the culture has for Office Space, I have for Superman 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's appropriate because the two movies are intertwined.
Yeah, that's right.
He says, definitely not a critical or financial success, but I can't help but feel and acknowledge how purposefully goofy and intentional Superman 3 is. Large cowboy hats, suitcases full of alcohol, an unemployed man being a super hacker. Boy, it's like he's describing my life. I have to say. It's wonderful. As a Superman feature, it's not the adaptation you'd think, for sure. However, if evil Superman's worst crime is blowing out the Olympic torch, come on, that's gold. Terrorizing a sculptor, making Pisa models, platinum.
Maybe one of my top moments in the whole Superman series.
It's so great. I love it. He says, if there's anything that the film has given us, it's the resurgence of my use of the word keister. And I should say, for those of you who came in late, that's because you and I, Brian, we during the course of our commentary track for that film, I said that Superman must have taken that. How did he get that jar of acid past the computer, the supercomputer? Obviously, he keistered it.
Yes, he keistered the acid.
He keistered the acid, and thus a catchphrase for the ages was born. And Spencer said, for that, I'm forever grateful. It's further away from release, but I'm hopeful that generations might find the gem that is Richard Pryor v. Superman. Right. Thank you, Spencer, for that. And then we have another note from Adam O, and this is in regards to our Die Hard with a Vengeance commentary track.
Oh, our last episode.
Most recently. He says, This was the first Die Hard movie I saw, so I have a soft spot for it. It's a big incoherent in the middle. Excuse me. Let me try that again. Mm-hmm. Brian, sorry. Yep. It's a bit incoherent in the middle, but Willis and Jackson have such great chemistry. It makes up for any flaws.
Hear, hear. Yeah, we're big fans.
I think that's sort of, I think like any big franchise, you sort of glom onto whichever one you happen to see first.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wonder about that a little bit. Like Die Hard 3 really blows up the paradigm, right?
Mm.
So if you watch that one first and then you watch the previous two, are you like, oh, this is so like small scale?
Yeah, it's confined. He doesn't go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not. He's just in the one building. What's that all about?
Mm-hmm.
I think it has withstood the test of time.
I think so. I think time has been kind to it also. I think it's more beloved now than it's been. I think it's been, people have gone back and reevaluated it, or at least the people who weren't crazy about it to begin with, right? Because I always liked it too, because I was kind of young and just took it for what it was and enjoyed it. What
was it not well liked? My recollection is that it did really well, which we talked about when it came out.
I feel like there was a moment, and I don't know, it could have just been in my sphere, but when I talked about it with people, that was not a favorite.
That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's my memory of it, because I remember having this feeling, always being surprised and being like, oh really, I don't know, I think it's kind of good.
I guess I've never had like in-depth conversations about the Die Hard films with anybody.
Yeah, it was just, like coworkers and things, but yeah.
Well, hey, thank you everybody for those comments on our commentaries.
Yeah.
I got a message on Blue Sky from Terrence, who just said, hey guys, I love listening to the show, and I just want to ask, how are you guys doing? Which I was tickled by that message because nobody asks us how we're doing, Brian.
Yeah, no.
And I just want to say, Terrence, thank you for asking. Doing okay, I think.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was thinking of like a comedy album, like Adam Sandler, when they have all the Foley. Like, I wish you could hear like ice. I'm like, well, and then hear like ice clinking in a glass and boom, 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 boom.
My usual response is taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I mean, look, it'd be easy for me to say like, good, yeah, good. You know, people are like, how you doing? You're like, oh, good, good. Like you just say good. It's
Yes.
just like a response. You know, life's got its ups and downs at the moment. I'll be entirely honest.
To quote the Just the 10 of Us theme song, we're doing it the best we can.
Yeah. So definitely there are days when, you know, you're doing something and it's really fun with your friends and you're like, oh, wow, I feel very lucky. I feel very blessed for these people and the things that I get to do and that sort of thing. And then there are other days when...
Looking to improve your diet in the new year? Try seeing a personal dietitian with Nourish. Nourish has hundreds of dietitians who specialize in a variety of health concerns, including weight loss, gut health, and more. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your personal dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
You know, life's not going your way and you feel a little down, you know? So it's... Yeah, I would say kind of up and down, but you know, truly, and this is being honest, doing this show and getting to talk to Zachy for 2 hours every week is truly a highlight and lifts me up every time. And the engagement with everybody. I mean, people leave comments after the show and we get these listener letters and I just feel so touched by all of it. And so I enjoy the connection that comes from this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of Just the 10 of Us, I don't know if you knew this. I happened to be on YouTube the other day, and they had the opening credits for that. You know,
mm-hmm.
And it has a very catchy intro theme, so you do have to kind of listen to it. The kid, like the did you ever watch that show? By the way,
no, I remember it, but no,
you're like aware of it though, right?
Yeah.
I was not a regular viewer, but the kid on that show, the young boy, is Matt Shackman.
Wait, I know that name.
He's the director of the Fantastic Four.
Ah, wow.
You know, so he did WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
And then, based on the back of that, he did the Fantastic Four, or he's doing the Fantastic Four. I was like, is that the same? And I looked it up, and it is indeed the same guy. I'm like, well, he really is doing it the best he can.
Yeah.
There is a YouTube channel that is dedicated to taking, this is for our listeners, I think you already know about this, Brian, taking the Just the 10 of Us theme song and placing it on the intro sequences from other shows.
Yeah, that's right.
Under the thesis that the Just the 10 of Us theme song works for any show.
Mm-hmm.
And it is rather remarkable because I would say it works about 80% of the time, like flawlessly.
Yeah. That reminds, I think you sent me that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, like there's just something about seeing Walter White making meth with the Just the 10 of Us theme in the background that just kind of puts a little spring in your step, I have to say.
Yeah.
Hey, we got some news here, Brian.
Man, yeah, a lot of news.
Unfortunately, a lot of passings have happened very recently and sort of clumped together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is from a couple months ago, but I did want to mention it, given that it very much overlaps with the things we talk about. John Irwin passed away. He was 88 years old, and you may not know the name, you may not know the face, but I suspect you know his voice because he was the voice of He-Man in the 1980s animated series.
Yeah.
He was also the voice of Reggie in the Archie cartoon show, and he was the voice of Morris the Cat from the TV commercials.
Oh, interesting. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I saw a random sort of little fact about him that I sent to you, which is he is also the voice of the radio sportscaster in Back to the Future Part 2, who's announcing the football game when old Biff is trying to prove to young Biff that the sports almanac is real. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So definitely, when you say He-Man's voice, like I know exactly what that voice is.
Same. Yeah, I can hear it in my head.
Right. And really, what's kind of amazing is he did both Prince Adam and He-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a matter of, lowering it by an octave and sounding heroic
Right.
And you go a little higher pitched, and you sound like dorky Prince Adam.
um yeah, well, I mean, yeah, and of course I can hear the echoey "I have the power."
It is amazing how like that character has resonated.
Mm.
Right. I mean, we joke about like, well, it's fallen out of favor, whatever, but like that cartoon, people still watch it.
Yeah.
And kids continue. And I honestly, like, I think a big part of that is because he was voiced in such a welcoming way.
Yeah.
Like he seems like the friend you'd want to have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right. Like the connection I draw is like Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime. Right.
Mm-hmm.
What Cullen does so effectively is he has like the gravel to give it, the sense of like seriousness, right? But he has the softness to make him sound like a friend.
That I really do. I can't think of examples off the top of my head, but I have noticed this in films or shows or whatever, where it's like when you have the tough as nails or hard boiled leader, that's great. But you also want to feel like it's a person who would bring you in, like would not be like, beat it, Brian, you can't hang, with this guy. I really do feel like that's a real, an unspoken part ingredient that's really important to those types of characters, where you feel like they'd feel like they want you to be a part of the heist too, you're right. And both of those voice actors do a great job of imbuing their characters with that quality.
Like, I think at least part of the reason that 87 live action movie was not received particularly well is that, well, Dolph Lundgren doesn't sound like He-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, I mean, there were some, I don't know if they're leaked, but there were some set pictures.
Yeah. I guess this movie is actually happening.
I know, you and I joked because they've been saying they're going to make a Masters of the Universe movie for, decades.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the entire life of this podcast.
Yeah. And there have been scripts and stops and starts, but you and I were joking, when our butts are in seats in the theater and it's actually rolling in front of us, that's when we'll believe it. But we saw set photos and actually I don't know the actor's name, but
Nicholas Galitzine.
Okay. Looks pretty good. Yeah, I think.
Well, my wife is suddenly a fan.
Well, we should say two things. One, there's some sort of like teaser poster image thing where you just see a gripped fist holding the sword, which is awesome because it looks exactly like the sword.
Against a Peck, we should say.
Yeah, against a Peck, yeah, and not Gregory Peck's descendants. We're talking
no.
But the set photo is kind of interesting, and you have to think about it a little bit because we're seeing He-Man or Prince Adam or whoever in jeans and a button-up shirt in modern times. So you're led to wonder, is this another movie where He-Man is sent to Earth? Kind of like the 80s film. What's the story going to be here? I think some people were a little like, not this again. Like, can we have this take place on Eternia? I don't know. I mean, I'll keep an open mind, but I mean, what did you think when you saw that?
Well, as soon as I saw the picture, I was like, oh, well, he's wearing a white t-shirt and a pink button down. So he looks like Prince Adam. Mm-hmm. Right. So I was like, oh, so it's Prince Adam. It's not He-Man. I was like, oh, so they're doing the thing like the old Filmation show where he's got the exact same physique.
Right.
But like people are like, oh, how can nobody recognize Superman when he takes the glasses off? I'm like, hey, He-Man just takes his shirt off and nobody recognizes him.
Yeah.
He gets tan and half naked. If I were to guess, I don't know anything about this movie thus far, plot wise, but I would guess he's on Eternia and he doesn't know who he is.
I was gonna say, I wonder if this is a Hook situation. Yeah.
That right, exactly. You know, that would be my guess. I have no idea, but the mirror, he looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
And I saw interviews of him from like a year ago, and he was like this very thin looking guy. So I'm like, damn, he put in the work. That's for sure.
Yeah.
They've got a great cast. So and Travis Knight, by the way, he's directing. He did Bumblebee.
Oh, which I liked.
Exactly, right.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
certainly had the exact right flavor in terms of respecting an 80s mythos.
Yeah, very much so. You're right. Yeah, the whole 80s thing. And then it also had humor and heart.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
to me, the cast list is, well, okay, not Jared Leto as Skeletor notwithstanding. And even that, I'm willing to hold out for, because I feel like there's the potential of Leto doing something fun and interesting with it.
Frankly, if he must do this at all, that could actually kind of work.
Yeah, and it's going to be a CG thing and whatever, it's fine. But like, and we talked about Idris Elba playing Man at Arms, and Morena Baccarin is the sorceress and all that stuff. I'm like, wow. And I read that it's like Trapjaw and Triclops and Fisto, and I'm like, I know all of those guys.
Yeah, they're like actually going for it.
Yeah. So I'm like, show me what Battle Cat looks like, and let's get the sucker going.
Yeah, and Orko. Will there be Orko?
That's the eternal question.
I remember having that toy. It had that little zip thing that you pull through it.
Yeah, it was like a drag strip, right? You know what I love? Filmation, the company that made the show, was notoriously cheap, right? Because they would, if you watch the show, they would reuse the same animation sequences and whatever, right?
Yeah.
So Orko, who was created for the show, he was originally going to be called Gorpo.
Huh.
And the reason they changed him to Orko,
I know why. Yeah.
is because if you put a G on his chest, you can't flip the cell.
Oh, I thought it was going to be even more like minutia, where it was like lip flap, because then you'd have to have a different sort of. You could go Orko.
Oh,
like your
no,
mouth does one.
That's good. No, it's just because he had an O on his chest.
Oh, that's so funny. That makes complete sense. And you know what? I respect that. I
think so
that.
too. I'm like, hey, man, because here's the thing: because Filmation. Even as a kid, like, I knew Filmation shows, and I was like, oh, Filmation, they're the ones that always reuse the animation.
Mm-hmm.
Which, A, is entirely appropriate, because He-Man toys, like, constantly reused parts.
Right.
And I knew, like, even as a kid, I knew that.
Right, like another beefy, muscly action figure is just He-Man's body painted green.
Yeah, well, the most mercenary use of this was a character called Faker.
Okay.
Which was He-Man. It was the body was He-Man, but it was molded in blue plastic.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
right.
They gave him Skeletor's harness in orange. So he's a blue He-Man with an orange Skeletor harness, and they're like, "This is Faker. He's the evil He-Man robot." And I'm like, golf clap for that, right?
Yeah.
Because even as a kid, I was like, that is some bullshit right there.
Right.
I know what y'all doing.
Yeah, they could have just taken He-Man and put like a old-timey mustache on him and called him Faker. So I gotta, at least they used some paint.
So that was like, Mattel was notorious for that. Filmation would do the same thing. So I'm like, no, I respect that, partly because at the time in the 80s, Filmation was the only animation company that was fully made in the United States.
Wow.
And so that's how they kept costs down. Everyone else was shipping their work overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? We have no domestic animation now because overseas just does it cheaper. So Filmation was holding down the line. I respect that.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, the He-Man movie, we don't even know what it's called. Is it called Masters of the Universe?
Yeah, I don't know. Not sure.
That is, it's coming out next summer. So not 25, but 26.
I'm into it. It's tickling a little nostalgia for me. I really hope it's fun.
Well, this is going to be an Amazon MGM release. So Brian, you know what that means? We might be looking at a shared cinematic universe with 007
yes.
and Jack Reacher, and I'm going to say Bill and Ted.
Yeah. Maybe RoboCop.
Or throw RoboCop in there.
Yeah, maybe Fred Astaire brought back through special effects.
It'll be like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or something.
Yeah. Oh man, actually, you know what would be the most amazing magic trick ever is if they did do something that ridiculous, but they're like, no, it's going to be good. Like, let's really make something brilliant.
Just play it totally straight.
Yeah. I don't know why. That's just my thing. I want to see people do something that's really, really stupid, but like really like manipulate everyone, and then you're like, wait, I think that's actually good. I don't know how to feel about this.
Well, it's like Bel Air, right? The show, the Peacock show.
Oh, right, yes.
Where again, it started as like a trailer, like let's do it, like play it straight, and that's what makes it funny,
like a Funny or Die kind of thing. Yeah,
yeah.
Like
and then
what if
the show, and it's
yeah,
like pretty decent.
that's I don't know. So you watched first season at least?
I've watched the first season, yeah.
Okay, interesting. And Will Smith, I mean, because didn't it start literally as a parody, and then Will Smith was like, "Let's talk."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Will Smith, man, you know, he is a producer on Cobra Kai.
Interesting,
right? And so I would assume that whatever rights he had, thanks to the 2010 movie, he's somehow still he gets to dip his beak, you know.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah,
right. So I'm like, hey, you know, good for him.
Yeah, totally.
make that money. So John Irwin, a voice for the ages, truly. And he will be missed. Another person who just passed away a couple days ago as we record this, Michelle Trachtenberg.
Yeah, that was shocking.
Came as a surprise. She was, of course, she I think for many people came on the scene with Harriet the Spy in the 90s. I knew her as Dawn. She was Buffy the Vampire Slayer's younger sister, but of course she had been in Gossip Girl. She was in the movie Euro Trip. Died at age 39.
Yeah.
For cause of death undetermined, but obviously age 39 is not.
Looking to improve your diet in the new year? Try seeing a personal dietitian with Nourish. Nourish has hundreds of dietitians who specialize in a variety of health concerns, including weight loss, gut health, and more. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your personal dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
You know, generally, that's not a normal thing, you know?
Right. Well, and she had a surgery recently, right? Something involving her liver.
Liver transplant?
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I mean, you can kind of imagine. But yeah, seeing that headline in the number 39, it just feels like a kick to your chest. You shouldn't see that.
And she was somebody. I mean, she had continued to work, but you know, she had dealt with some stuff. You know, I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when all this stuff came out about Joss Whedon. One of the things that was said is that he was not allowed to be alone with her.
Yeah,
right. And so that made me think, like, man, you know, she was probably dealing with a lot of this Hollywood bullshit from a very young age and for most of her life, probably. And that's just a rough thing in general, you know?
And then after she passed, I mean, what's sort of heartening to see is that all the tributes to her and all the people who had worked with her through all those years just had nothing but really lovely and heartfelt things to say about her and her character. And so, I mean, through it all, it sounds like she was someone that people really loved and enjoyed working with. So,
yeah. So Michelle Trachtenberg, gone at 39. Also, this is a big one. Gene Hackman died.
This was shocking. I mean, shocking. Well, it's. I mean, he was 95.
Right. But I feel like to some extent, it was, at least for me. I'm not going to speak for you, but it's like, well, once you're over 90, you're sort of like, well, this is a headline that's going to be coming at some point.
But let me. Yes, I think what I mean is, he is one of those people, though. He kind of disappeared from public life, so he's locked into my mind.
21 years ago. Yeah,
so like 20 some years ago, which is not too far from Royal Tenenbaums or something. So in my mind, he's still like that guy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But no, he's 95, and that's a heck of a life. But this one's kind of weird, right?
We don't know the full extent, the circumstances. We may not know for a while.
Well, because his wife was also found dead, the two of them, and then also one of their dogs.
That's right.
And at first it seemed like, oh, this feels like if they were all dead in their home, maybe it's a carbon monoxide kind of situation. Right. But then police were saying that now this is suspicious, in quotes, circumstances, and there's some story that they're going to have to try to dig into to see what happened.
What I read is there were open pill bottles that were found, and they were in different rooms.
Yes.
It is a moving target in terms of the full extent of what happened, and that is it'll all come out in due time. However, ultimately, we're talking about a legend.
Yes.
Truly, I mean, like one of the greatest actors of all time, one of the most indelible screen presences, and I love what Zach Stentz said on social media. He says, "Be so good at what you do that you can die more than a decade after your retirement at age 95, and it will still feel like an unspeakable loss."
Right, yeah,
right, and that's really like there was no precedent or antecedent for Gene Hackman. He was one of a kind. Right. Obviously, for me, and I would assume for many people listening, maybe even you, the first time I saw him was Superman.
Probably, yeah.
Right. And I remember even as a kid, when I was able to read, I was like, oh, Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, Superman, Christopher Reeve. I was like, so this guy's a big deal, that means.
Right. Credited before Superman himself, yeah.
Right. And he was just a fact of movie-going life, certainly for our childhoods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, Unforgiven and Hoosiers, all that stuff.
I mean, we can keep going. The Conversation, French Connection, 1 and 2. But he was great in Runaway Jury, which was one of the last movies he did. Obviously, you mentioned Royal Tenenbaums. Yep. I mean, even like the thing is, he whatever the movie was, like Superman 4, nobody's going to argue that's a good movie. Even Christopher Reeve looks like he's halfway out the door. Gene Hackman shows up, man. He is not the bad part of that movie.
Right. He comes to play.
He right, and there's a great story that Ben Stiller told about working with him on Royal Tenenbaums, where Stiller is like super intimidated working with him, and he wants to talk to him about how much he loved him in the Poseidon Adventure. And so the whole shoot, after several, weeks of knowing him, or whatever, feeling comfortable with him, he says, Gene, I just want to say how much, I saw the Poseidon Adventure when I was a kid, and it's changed my life. It made me want to become a filmmaker, and had such a big impact on me. And Hackman goes, yeah, that was a money job. And then he gets up and walks away. I'm like, hey, he still showed up, Yeah.
What's funny is, like, I can imagine initially like maybe a little disappointment in that moment for Stiller, but then you're like, nah, man, that's Hackman. Like I had a Hackman moment.
And I love this quote. This was from Gene Hackman. He says, "No matter what you feel about the project, be the best you can be, because sometime, somewhere, someone will see it."
That's great.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Like I read that quote, as soon as this broke, but that quote has been like living in my head for the last, 36 hours. 'Cause I mean, it's incredibly profound when you think about it.
Yeah.
And clearly, like, you can draw a corollary with the Poseidon Adventure. Look, man, Ben Stiller didn't know he just did that for the money.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then, I mean, look at the impact he's had, inspired by your work early on.
That's right.
By the way, I'm just looking at all his movies here, and I just have to call out Crimson Tide.
Oh,
because
fantastic!
Good Lord, him and Denzel squaring off in like tight, sweaty submarine quarters. I love that movie.
Yeah, that one. And you and I, we just watched Enemy of the State recently. He's great in that. Obviously, The Conversation. Even like Behind Enemy Lines, which is not a movie I'm crazy about. He showed up.
Yeah.
He was memorable in it. And I distinctly, I remember when he had stopped acting, and he said something. I mean, it was a couple of years after Welcome to Mooseport, which is his last movie. He was just like, yeah, I'm done acting. And I was like, oh man, that's a bummer, just not being able to see him. But I remember thinking also, imagine having the centeredness of being a huge Hollywood star and just being like, you know what, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like it's not like Hollywood walked away from him.
Right.
Because the truth of it is, he could have kept acting as long as he wanted.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm good. I've had a career.
Well, and you know what's cool is he wrote a couple books also.
Yeah, I
So
think
he
5.
found like a new, passion, hobby, whatever you want to call it. And I love that. Like maybe, yeah, he had done what he felt like he needed to do or all that he wanted to do when it came to acting. So then he found another thing to invest himself in. And yeah, you don't always see that.
Yeah, it's refreshing,
Mm-hmm.
What are some of you mentioned Crimson Tide. What are some of your other favorites?
I mean, yeah, I like Superman obviously was really big. I'm just like looking through his things. I'm actually, they're the obvious ones, right? Like, yeah, the conversation and stuff. But like, I'm looking at the ones that I've kind of forgotten about, like The Firm,
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. Yeah.
or The Quick and the Dead. Of course, he's so
Which
good.
you just
in that
saw
movie.
recently.
Yeah, I mean, he's a real SOB in that movie. It's
Mhm.
it's so good. And I'll admit, there's ones in here I'm looking at that I feel like I haven't seen that I want to watch. I've never seen French Connection 2. Kind of curious.
I think I've said before, I'm like, it's more Popeye Doyle. It's not as good as the first one, but
Sure.
I think it's a perfectly fine movie.
Yeah. Or Postcards from the Edge I've never seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of work here to dig through.
Mississippi Burning, I think, is a terrific movie.
I've never seen that. I recognize the poster as a VHS case from my childhood.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's Gene Hackman and Willem Dafoe investigating, hate crimes in Mississippi. It's Lex Luthor and the Green Goblin teaming up.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a very good one.
Wow, he's in Bonnie and Clyde. I don't know that movie. I've seen it.
Bonnie and Clyde is kind of what put him on the map, right? He's Clyde's brother.
Oh man, it's been a while.
Yeah. I would say because that's what really got the ball rolling for him,
Yeah. Bat 21. That's like a movie that used to be on like Fox 32 on a Saturday. It's like bringing back memories. Class action.
There's it was a movie with Hugh Grant called Extreme Measures.
Yep, I'm looking at it here. Yeah,
which I've always liked that one too.
Oh, The Birdcage. That's like I've never seen that. That's a blind spot for me. I got to watch that one.
Yeah, a lot of very good movies. And but Runaway Jury, you talk about it's him and Dustin Hoffman on opposite sides of a legal war. I'm like, come on, man. A chance to watch these two guys square off?
Totally, yeah.
Right? So that's kind of the great thing is you look at his filmography, and more often than not, you've got some really good movies waiting for you.
Yep.
So a life well lived and a career that is enviable, regardless of what industry one happens to be in.
Absolutely.
Other news, I thought this literally just happened as we hopped on. Joseph Wamba passed away.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with him, but you started telling me about him and his career and how influential he was, and I'm excited to talk about him.
I recently found out that you can see a personal dietitian covered by insurance. There's this platform called Nourish that will match you with a dietitian based on whatever your concerns are, whether that's weight loss, eating disorders, autoimmune conditions, or something else. They're actually a network with major insurance providers, so most patients pay $0 out of pocket. 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
Yeah, so he was an ex-cop who he started out writing. He wrote for TV. He wrote for procedurals like Dragnet and whatnot. But what he started to do by virtue of his novels, he wrote a book called The New Centurions, which was kind of a real seminal work in terms of getting into the inner turmoil of police, right? And that was in turn what led to the creation of shows like Police Story in the 70s. And that in turn led directly to your NYPD Blues or I mean, gosh, even ER, to some like Hill Street Blues, NYPD Blues, like the idea of police officers who are not just impervious and Jack Webb, and Dragnet, but they have insecurities and everything else, and they grapple with the consequences of what they do. The stuff that makes for great drama. and so again, you get your Hill Street Blues, you get your NYPD, and seriously, ER, which is not a cop show, but it takes that same approach, right? The inner turmoil of somebody who is in essence serving the public, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't get The Wire and any of this stuff, without what Joseph Wambaugh did. I have a whole unit in my media class where I talk about police procedurals, and so Wambaugh, has a pretty big chunk of that history.
Mm-hmm.
He gets to claim that. The New Centurions was a movie, and it starred George C. Scott. It starred George C. Scott.
Okay.
And it's pretty great. It's based on his book.
Okay, I see it here in 1972.
Yep. And that's worth watching,
All right. Well, yeah, amazing. Isn't that interesting? It sometimes it just takes one person to lock on to something.
Yeah.
And then that's just the thing that everything else takes its cues from.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I would think, over the course of his career, over the course of his lifespan, he saw the ups and downs of how policing was perceived.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was something he always maintained. He kept one foot in by virtue of the writing that he did. He was writing up through the 2010s.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a whole series of books called the Hollywood Station series.
Mm-hmm.
Which look at local police versus the federal role in policing and stuff. Really interesting stuff, and certainly a very distinctive point of view. And again, we can get into things like propaganda and all of that stuff, which is still very those are heated conversations. But in terms of the drama that has emerged, I think that The Wire, which is a show that you absolutely adore, NYPD Blue, people know how I feel about that. These are beacons,
yep.
Of good drama, and they wouldn't exist if not for things that Joseph Wambaugh sort of shone a light on.
Wow.
So
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think I hear some music, Brian. So I think that means we have some Star Wars news.
Finally, again, right? It's this used to be a reoccurring thing that we'd have every single week.
It was a regular feature.
Yeah.
People looked forward to it. Families would gather around their iPhones and say, "Shh, here it comes."
You're right. And it's funny. I was picturing like one of those big stand-up radios and kids running in with their dinner plates and lying on the ground
with their bowls of C-3PO's cereal.
Yes, and they were hearing the Star Wars music, but they weren't like, "Oh, the continuing adventures of Luke Skywalker." They're like, "No, Brian and Zachy are talking."
Yeah, they have opinions.
Yeah. Well, it's this is kind of appropriate that we're even talking about that specifically, because I feel like we started Star Wars news probably because of this sale, from Lucas to Disney and bringing in Kathleen Kennedy, right, to oversee Lucasfilm. And now this week we've learned that she will be stepping down.
Maybe not.
What?
We don't know.
Wait, I thought she was retiring.
It's a moving target, because she herself said, "I am not retiring."
I should. It's so funny. The only reason I said retire is because I have the article in front of me and I saw that word. Not retiring, of course, because she said yes. She's never going to retire from filmmaking. She said she's going to die making movies. But I thought she was thinking about bringing someone up into her role, and she would then show them the ropes, train them, and then step down in the near future. Is that correct, or is that?
Well, so that's the confusing aspect of all of this, because essentially what we had was a situation where earlier this week, as we record this, there's a guy from Puck News named Matt Baloney,
mm-hmm.
who apparently dropped some baloney, Brian.
Yes.
Because he put a very breathless report. That's it. She's out of here. She's been shown the door. Don't let the door hit you where the Lord split you. is what Bob Iger said, according to
according to Baloney.
Yeah, so and then of course this really started making the rounds everywhere. She's out the door. And contextualizing this a little bit, for the last several years there are portions of the internet, I'm going to say the shittiest portions of the internet, which have been like, Star Wars is woke because of Kathleen Kennedy and show her the door and whatever, right? So they were salivating over this news. However, according to Kathleen Kennedy, what she's saying is, look, at some point, I need to think about, well, who's going to take over? We need to have a succession plan in place. It doesn't mean I'm retiring anytime soon.
I see. Now,
according to her, she's like, look, there's no chaos or anything. This is just, we're just, this is the stuff you do in a company. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't know enough, Brian. I'm a naive bumpkin from the Midwest.
Well, it feels like a pretty consuming role. She's done it for over a decade. Lucasfilm, Star Wars, whatever, is not necessarily her baby, right? Yeah. So it makes sense.
She was raising George Lucas's baby.
Kinda, yeah. Like bringing it into a new era. And then, hand over the reins. And like she said, I mean, she's a producer. She's been producing since freaking Raiders of the Lost Ark, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's other worlds she wants to shepherd.
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, I don't know. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Oh yeah. By the way, yeah. I don't mean to sound naive. I mean, yeah.
No, I think the problem is that even if she was making some noise about, hey, we need to find a succession plan, I think that it's very important both for her and for Disney to not make it seem like the trolls claimed a scalp.
Right. And I don't even know that they necessarily did, but I'm sure she's probably
but they don't want to give the perception.
Yes. But I'm sure she's probably gained a few gray hairs and is like, all right, I did what I said I'd do, and I've accomplished some things here that I can be proud of, and it's time to move on.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, number one, she's done the job for 13 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this all the time. I'm like, who the hell would want to do this job? Like, let's say she leaves tomorrow.
Yeah.
Everybody is going to be like, not it.
Yeah, you would think, right?
Right. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't care if it's Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau or George Lucas.
Yeah. I mean, you're just, no matter what, you're walking in front of a firing squad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the issue. So in that sense, I think Disney would be like, look, stay as long as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be my guess. Like I think on balance, she's shepherded the franchise in a decent enough way, and not to say that it has been perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But I just off the top of my head, I feel like there have been more successes than not.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're pretty honest about it. There's things we've connected with. There's things we haven't. If you really, who knows how long in history Lucasfilm is going to be a thing. But if you look at it, let's just say it lasts for, oh, wow, it probably has lasted for 50 years. I was going to say 50 because of SNL. But let's say 100 years.
Okay.
If Lucas isn't going to be there forever and you look at it as this long, long timeline, of course, you'd look at the Lucas years, and then you'd look at the whatever transition is next. Of course, there's going to be like a slight little dip because people have to. What is your identity without George Lucas? What is Lucasfilm without Lucas?
Yeah,
right. There's gonna be a transition period, and then they're gonna figure out what works, what doesn't, and then in the long span of its timeline, of course, it's probably going to find some highs again, probably going to find some lows again, and as they experiment with other things, and that's just kind of the way it goes, with something that's going to exist for this long.
If you have health insurance, you might be able to see a personal dietitian for $0 out of pocket. Nourish connects you with a dietitian that fits your needs, covered by your insurance. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans, and 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. With hundreds of 5-star reviews from real patients, you know you're in good hands. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
I'm contextualizing this with last week's news about Amazon taking over the James Bond franchise.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if anybody listening to this is interested in our thoughts on that, we did an in-depth conversation for a good half hour on our Patreon feed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to hear our thoughts on that, it's a lot.
Yeah, Zachy especially has got feelings because he's big Bond fan. So I was very interested to hear what you thought about it. So
yeah, it's easy to sort of just be cynical about all of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just more corporate product.
Mm-hmm.
And I hesitate to do that because I'm like, well, these are still made by people, and I think it's possible to have people making this corporate product that's compelling and meaningful and whatever, right? I mean, like, the Marvel universe is this big expansive thing, but like Kevin Feige is still the guy doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't always get on base, but for the most part, he's kept that thing, he's kept our interest,
Yeah.
And so I think it's possible to, whether we're talking about Star Wars or James Bond, that to find people who care and want it to be, the best it can be.
Yeah. I mean, I think so I'm probably just going to repeat exactly what you said, but like that was sort of where I landed with the whole Amazon Bond thing, because
that's right.
Yes, I do feel a little cynical about it, where it just becomes something that used to be owned and curated by the people in the family, in the families who created it. So they would rather make a good movie than have something that hits a certain timeline for a good quarterly profit. Right. And so now that it's owned by a company that wants to figure out how to make their streaming service profitable, you can be certain it's going to be exploited to some degree. The hope then is that the people who are put in charge of the creative aspects of it really give a crap about James Bond. So it's like, all right, well, if the show's going to exist, let's make it the best darn show possible. Yeah. Right. So I guess both can be true. You can be a little cynical about it, but also kind of hopeful.
Yeah. And that's a hard place to find yourself, because, it's just easier to be cynical.
I think I'm feeling more cynical than I have in a long time, because
I'm getting that.
Well, with the Bond thing, but I was hearing about
like dark Stubbly Brian.
Yes. Yeah, this is Spider-Man 3 Peter Parker Brian. What does he say? Like under his breath, like, what does he whisper? Something like, cool.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember. And he's like snaps in a jazz trio plays. But no, I think when I heard Goonies 2 was actually like in the process of being developed, at least, that was like what the straw that broke Brian's back.
Something broke inside of you that day.
Well, I mean, look, not that it hasn't already happened. I mean, you really think about it. I mean, Top Gun 2, if you had said that 5 years ago, you'd be like, just stop. Top Gun 2, it doesn't need to happen. It can't possibly be good. Like, it's locked. It's locked in time in the 80s. It's an artifact. It can't be replicated. But they did it. You know, Maverick's pretty darn good. But it also makes you realize, oh, well, then with that success, why wouldn't they do Goonies 2? Why wouldn't they do? But I get a little weirder about Goonies because the thing is, what works about that movie is like 80s childhood magic. And you can't, like, they're grown up. They're different. It won't be the same. When you do a sequel, you inherently have to undo every happy ending you did in the previous movie because you need to give them drama. I don't want to see all the Goonies kids divorced and unhappy, and then you've got...
That's, let me get spoiler. That will for sure be the case for at least half of them.
Right? Or or one will have spent all the treasure and is destitute now, and then they're going to have these kids, and then it's like, really, you're going to really try to recreate Lightning in a Bottle with this like kid cast that we're all going to love. And it's just a really tall order. I'm not saying they can't do it, but it's a tall order. And it just made me, people have been saying this for a long time, and I've been trying to be Pollyanna about it, but it's just like, nothing is sacred anymore.
Nothing is sacred.
It's all there to be exploited and to make all these companies' streaming services stay afloat. And bums me
I'm
out.
sort of sorry, Brian. I'm
Yeah.
I'm just fascinated by the fact that I'm kind of at a more sanguine place about all of this than you are,
Yeah.
which is new terrain on this show.
You know what though? It's not like this is keeping me up at night or anything, but I'm sort of resigned to it. I guess
I reached resignation like a while ago. I think that's kind of
then I will reach sanguine soon. I'm in the sort of defeated. Well, that's just the way it is now, and we're not gonna.
If you have health insurance, you might be able to see a personal dietitian for $0 out of pocket. Nourish connects you with a dietitian that fits your needs, covered by your insurance. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans, and 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. With hundreds of 5-star reviews from real patients, you know you're in good hands. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.
That's not entirely true, but there's not a lot of new things being created. So we can have sequels down the line. We're just continuing to pummel and exploit everything that already exists, and everything that's beloved that hasn't been exploited yet, is now, it's going to happen. Back to the Future, it's going to happen.
Well, so this is my thought, right? Like 2000 and summer of 2012. One thing you knew is that there's not going to be any Star Wars without George Lucas say so. There's not going to be any James Bond without the Broccoli's say so. And there's not going to be any Back to the Future without the Bobs say so.
Uh-huh.
Well, 2 of those bulwarks are now gone.
Yeah.
So right now, Back to the Future is a load-bearing structure in my psyche.
Yeah, I don't even want to have this pass my lips, but also E.T. But
see, I think E.T., what works in favor of that never being revisited is that the re-release flopped so spectacularly.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know why this is such like an inside joke between the two of us, but it's so true. It is. I mean, there's that Onion article we cite all the time, right? Where it was like
E.T. toys forced on uninterested children.
Yeah. Although my friend Michael Olson literally texted me last night as I was walking out of the Brutalist. He wrote me this nice long text about showing E.T. to his kids and talking about what he wasn't sure if it would work, and they're varying ages. Some of them are quite young. And it worked on all of them. He said they all cried.
Oh, sure. I mean, my kids love E.T.
Yeah, and he said I think it was his youngest. And he's like, he loves Paw Patrol, all these sorts of things. He said he turned to his dad at the end of the movie and said, "That was the best movie I've ever seen."
Wow, look at that.
So I was like, all right. Maybe they don't want the toys.
Cue Brian in the corner like Mr. Miyagi at the end of The Karate Kid, right?
You know what, though? I literally missed it up reading that. I really did. I don't know what it is. That movie imprinted on me in such a powerful way as a child that I'm really moved hearing that kids are still moved by E.T. So
absolutely, this
can be true. And the fact that they don't want little action figures of him can also be true. So
no, but this is the thing. Look, I hate to say this, but if the Broccoli's can sign over James Bond, to me, Back to the Future, the clock is ticking, if you'll pardon the pun.
You know what, though? I thought I just saw an interview. Someone emailed it to me. I apologize. I don't remember who. But it was the Karate Kid thing. Cobra Kai. The creators of Cobra Kai said they have a pitch.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the final episode kind of like nods at that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, in a funny way. Which, like, look, that whoever's in charge at Universal, whenever it happens, would be chomping at bits to get that back in theaters. And again, look, whether it happens or doesn't happen, it's at this point I'm like, I rule nothing out.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, 2 of the pillars have already fallen. Right?
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
At some point, and you just have to kind of find your Zen place where you're just like, well, this is my version is still there, it's there forever, and this new one, maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't.
I will say that has been a saving grace for me, is that I have reached that with cultural things where I used to be disheartened by a movie like Crystal Skull or something like that, but now No, I mean, I guess maybe you have to experience those things and have some time pass to realize that the thing you love continues. You will always continue to love that thing. It will always continue to exist, and that can be the one you keep going back to. You don't have to go to this other stuff.
I mean, speaking of Karate Kid, I remember when the remake came out in 2010.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks were upset about that.
Yeah.
And I was one of the few people who was like, it's actually not that bad.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when it comes to the whole Star Wars of it all, it is like, to me, no matter who takes over, what you realize is it's like Simpsons season 28.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not season 5. It can never be season 5. And so you have to judge it for what it is, and either like or dislike it as its own thing,
Yeah. And these things are becoming like corporate.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if this is a great comparison, but like something like Star Wars is almost like McDonald's. It's like it's an American institution now.
Yeah.
Right. And so it will continue on. And for a minute, they might decide they can make milkshakes quicker using chemicals, or, it might not taste quite the same. But then someone might go, no, we tried that and it doesn't feel right. And then, then they'll start using ice cream again. Like, who knows? Like it's not going anywhere. It's going to last for a long time. And we will see ups and downs because of that, I think.
You know what?
Just live with that.
That is the most hopeful and optimistic place that I think we can leave this episode at.
Well, I do think it's worth mentioning one more thing, which I didn't realize. Kathleen Kennedy confirmed that there is going to be. Well, I know how this goes. But you know what? I think it's worth saying. Sean Levy has a Star Wars movie coming up, apparently, that will be the next movie in production after Mandalorian and Grogu, and apparently it's set to star Ryan Gosling, which that's interesting.
We talked about that, didn't we? We talked about that.
I guess so. Or maybe I didn't know that had come from her directly, but yeah, and
that's set. That's kind of its own thing. It's not a saga movie. They've still got the Rey, whatever the hell that's going to end up being happening, and then Simon Kinberg.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like
and Mangold.
Oh right, the Dawn of the Jedi thing. Well, there's some interesting stuff in the pipeline. Let's see what happens, I guess.
And you know what though, with the Rey thing, I will say this favorably. As I've just sort of compared, this stuff to like mass production, and they've got to please a corporate overlord and whatever. They could very well have just been like, well, we haven't quite cracked it, but we told Disney we'd have a Rey movie by 2025. So, get the cameras rolling, but they haven't.
Yeah.
I hopefully they've, taken some lessons from certain things and been like, hey, we'll do it when it's right.
Trilogy of sequels.
Wait, what?
Like their own trilogy of sequels.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's like, all right, this isn't working. Like, well, then we won't roll cameras till we find it. That's what I hope is happening over there.
What a concept.
Yeah.
Well, that's a hopeful place to leave things.
Actually, I have some unfortunate news, Zachy.
God damn it.
I'm just kidding.
I want to be in my Zen place, and I want to live there for a little while.
Yeah, same.
Well, hey, but let us know your thoughts on the state of the Star Wars franchise. Should Kathleen Kennedy get tossed out a la Jazz on Fresh Prince? or maybe have a little bit of time where she co-heads the studio with somebody with new ideas, different ideas. Maybe she can handle the kind of like what DC has, where you got James Gunn doing the creative end and Peter Safran doing the money end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe something like that.
Yeah.
I do think Jon Favreau would be smart to stay as far away from that job as possible.
I think so too. I don't know if he wants to be like in a boardroom. Like I want to see him make more movies.
Yeah, exactly. Now he directed the Mandalorian movie, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Which again, it's weird how that's this summer, right? Isn't it?
Is that this year?
Isn't it?
The next film? Oh, in 2026. No.
Didn't they finish shooting it like 4 years ago or something?
I don't know. I'm just looking at an article on Gizmodo.
I mean, I think, look, when it comes to Star Wars, I've said it all along, we need to increase the scarcity, so that's fine. Take as long as you need. But I think the movie is done shooting, so I do wonder why they're just kind of sitting on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's weird. But maybe you do. If you have thoughts on the delay of The Mandalorian and Grogu, you can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. If you're Jon Favreau and you want to tell us why,
If you want to, just on the low, let us know. And you can also hit like on our Facebook page, Jon Favreau, which is facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast. And you can message us there. Brian, we also have a Patreon page.
Yes, we do. If you head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast and hit subscribe for only $5 a month, the price of a cup of coffee at Starbucks, you'll find every commentary we've ever done and receive every episode and commentary moving forward absolutely ad-free. It's our way of offering the most satisfying experience of listening to the podcast possible without all the ad breaks. And your subscription will go a long way in helping to support us and help sustain producing this show. So if you're interested and able, please head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast and subscribe.
There you go. And if you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. You can also find my reviews at the San Francisco Chronicle, also at the Wrap and IGN. And Brian, what do you have going on?
As always, you can find episodes I've written of Puppy Dog Pals and Young Jedi Adventures streaming on Disney+.
There you go. And with that, on behalf of my partner Brian Hall, my name is Zachy Hassan. This has been Movie Film 311. We'll catch you next time, folks. Thanks.
Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
If you have health insurance, you might be able to see a personal dietitian for $0 out of pocket. Nourish connects you with a dietitian that fits your needs, covered by your insurance. Nourish accepts hundreds of insurance plans, and 94% of patients pay $0 out of pocket. Meet with your dietitian online and message them anytime through the Nourish app. With hundreds of 5-star reviews from real patients, you know you're in good hands. Find your dietitian at usenourish.com. That's usenourish.com.